Welcome to the Trinitarian Podcast, Trinitarian Church Podcast. This is Adam, and today we're talking about the Bible. We're talking about Proverbs chapter 17. And I've got with me Alec and Jason. Say hi.
Howdy.
Hello.
So, Proverbs 17. It's a fun chapter. What are you guys thinking? I'm a bad host. Y'all are awesome.
You're a great host.
Talk about Proverbs.
It's a grab bag. I'll take credit for that. I didn't come up with it, but it's a grab bag. It's all kinds of random stuff. Lots of stuff in here about, foolishness, wisdom, Proverbs things.
And that summarizes the book of Proverbs, everyone.
And there we go. Okay, well, we're done with our Proverbs series. Thank you for joining us.
That's awesome.
All right, so what we're going to do today actually is what we've been doing for the last couple episodes of this series, and we seem to find that it works really well for these chapters, that just have a bunch of verses where there's not necessarily one uniting theme, and we're just going to pick a verse or a couple of verses that really stood out to us and talk about that and share that with you. So Adam, what verse or verses really stood out to you in this chapter?
Hey, the whole chapter, it's really good. Chapter 17, I'm going to go with verse 17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. You look back in your life, and you do have lots of friends who are, we even have the phrase, right? Fair weather friends. That's like sometimes when things are good, a friend is going to be there, but when things are not great, sometimes there are a few less people there. But somebody who's there for you when you're in need, and somebody that you can be there for when they're in need, that's a brother. That's family. It's really good stuff. How about you, Jason?
So there's a difference between those two kinds of friends. That there's the friends who you invite to help you move, and then there's the friends who actually show up to help you move, even if you're not buying them pizza. And so, like those, granted, that's pretty light on the adversity scale. But it's still a little telling, that those friends, you're like, hey man, I know that there's this thing. It's not exciting at all. I really just need bodies to heft boxes. But guys will show up just for that. And how much more so when it's something that's really serious. That'll tell you a lot about those kinds of friends and who you really want to keep around and who you're going to build strong bonds with.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's really true. I used to think a long time ago when I read this that it meant that your brother was born to create a time of adversity. Like that's what brothers are for,
there,
to fight each other. And I for the longest time I thought, it says brothers are there to fight each other. And I just, honestly wasn't until that recently that I looked at it and wait, that's not what it says. So anyway, but real good friends. That's what it's all about. The people who actually show up when you need them.
I mean, brothers are also there to create the adversity. That's how it goes sometimes with families. That's awesome. I think back to...
All right, Jason, what about you?
So mine that really stood out to me was 14, where it says, starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam, so drop the matter before a dispute breaks out. And there were a lot in here that spoke to me, but this one, it was just a good reminder with so many things that people can argue about that sometimes it's better to just shut up about it. And just believe it or not, there's this ties into an episode of Bluey, which if you don't have little kids, that's fine. You don't know what Bluey is. And, I'll say you're missing out. It's pretty darn good, actually. But they have one where it's like, well, do you want to be right or do you want to be friends? And that's what the parents say to the kids in the show, right? And I'm like, that's kind of true. It's like, do you want to be right? Do you want to argue it? Which I'm not one to argue, but I'm certainly one that enjoys debate if I'm in one. And it's like, how far do you want to take this? Do you really want to be right? Or do you just leave it alone because you're going to cause trouble at this point. There's a point where it's becoming a quarrel, and it's like breaching a dam. Like if you go there, you're going to be doing this for days. If you're married and you've had one of these with your wife or your husband, right? Like this this is what happens. Like, don't even go there. Don't bring that up, because this is going to make the next 3 days unpleasant, because they're going to think of all these other things that you did wrong or whatever it is, just don't do it. Like there's a time to leave it. And it's so tempting not to leave it sometimes. Like, I'm just going to bring this thing up because I'm right. Darn it. Just don't.
Right. And though I'm sure we all know people who maybe even in sometimes are a little too agreeable, and they take this to an extreme where they're like, nope, it's never worth ever mentioning anything at all. We've seen TV shows and things. You have a couple who's like at a restaurant, and one of them, their food comes out wrong. They're like, I can't say anything. I'm like, and the other one's just like, what do you mean you can't say anything? It's like, you're not starting anything just by bringing something up and challenging something necessarily. But
unless they spit in your
we
food.
have people like that. Well, yeah, sure, yes.
Yeah, don't.
Then you bring over the manager and get that worked out. But no, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that anything that might be viewed as disagreeable is necessarily starting a quarrel. And if you've lived any amount of time on this earth as an adult, you know pretty well when that line is most of the time, like when you're bringing something up and when you're throwing down.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder sometimes. I don't know how far we can push that metaphor, though, right? Like, the beginning of strife is like letting out water. Like, okay, so it's there, right? And if there is pressure and you need to let out some water, or the whole dam might break. I mean, it sometimes in a conversation you do need to let out, like, but not to. Yeah, how do you control that without the whole thing breaking and flooding the whole town? That's the question. You married guys, y'all get to know that.
That's why it says starting a quarrel, like with the intent to cause trouble. There are tactful ways to bring up problems that are not intentionally starting an argument.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I very, very much agree. And that usually anything that, Proverbs has told us as well, anything that's like gut reaction is probably not best to lean on that too much. Which I feel like is also very, very likely to start a quarrel. But if there's, if you're seeing a pattern of something that's happening, if you have time to think about it, like all right, how do I present this, to this other person who I'm seeing this in their life, and confront that in a loving way, that's the methodology there, I think, and not just what Jason said, not just throwing the stick of dynamite into the room and seeing what happens, but let's maybe let's address this pressure that's building up here, because there's pressure and it needs to get addressed in some fashion.
Fun stuff.
So I don't think we heard yours yet.
Yeah.
No, not yet. So for me, I picked verse 28. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. And I've actually been trying to practice this one a little bit lately. And coming from it more from a heart place of just wanting to understand. And also in being humbled to not needing to be the person who speaks the most in a conversation, which I don't know if you're seeing our last podcast episode, you'll wonder, is he really putting that into practice? He sure talked a lot. But in conversation with others, you get to really hear what other people have to say. And, when people finally get around to asking you, hey, what do you think about all this? Like, you've actually had time to listen, and not just have in your head, all right, what's my next response going to be? Which, but we all do that. And I think tempering that is a sign of wisdom. And that we know very often that sometimes the best thing to say is nothing at all, and that anything we say will just make things a little more explosive. And so to keep that in check, to not make things worse, but also from a spirit of understanding, to know what's going on, to be able to speak into it with wisdom, if and when your opinion is asked for. Because sometimes it's, more often than not, we know it's not, that our opinion usually isn't asked for, but we live in such a time that, I got to respond to this. I got to throw out a tweet, and tag, such and such post to let them know what I think about what they said. It's like, one, they might not receive it anyway, so you're kind of just shouting into the wind. And it's probably just better for your spirit to, let that go and not even bring it up at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in conversation, sometimes we're speaking because we want to be heard, and other times we're speaking because there's something that needs to be heard. And ideally, we're going to keep silent if it's just, I need to say something so that I'm the one who said something. But sometimes something needs to be said, and sometimes you're the one to say it.
And knowing the difference is wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Spot on.
It always comes back around to wisdom with this book, doesn't it?
something, wisdom. That's Proverbs, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that's Proverbs 17, ladies and gentlemen. Any other thoughts? Any other application? Any awesome gems of verses that we haven't talked about so far?
I'm sure there's plenty.
I'm going to mention one only because it's too good to pass up, and I'm going to have to find it. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's the one with the bears. Where's the one with the bears?
Oh, yes, verse 12.
That's it. Yeah, better to meet a bear robbed of her cubs than a fool bent on folly. And I'll just leave it at that. It's just good.
Crochet that one on your pillow. Put it on a bumper sticker. That's one for the books right there.
Fun stuff. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time. God bless.
See ya.
Bye.